وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقرآنه الحميد وقوله الحق. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. أولم يكف بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. There is discussion that has been going on for probably millennia. And that is, how did this universe come into existence? Is this universe, has it always been into existence? Or was it at some point non-existent and then came into existence? If that happened, how did that happen? Once we understand that, then the next question is, what are we doing? How did we come from? How did the human then come from? First of all, we understand that this universe is not eternal. In other words, it had a beginning. In the 1920s, an astronomer by the name of Hubble conducted some research and discovered that this universe is expanding. Upon this discovery, he came to the conclusion that this universe was not eternal. This universe had a beginning. It had a start. So then scientists started to look into that start. So what we know now in science, it tells us that this universe was not eternal. It began. It had a beginning. And they also suggest that it will have an end at some point. So then, how did that beginning happen? Where did it come from? This is where some contemporary scientists, people who are very prominent in their field of research. There is one very prominent physicist who died recently. He has a book that he co-authored with another physicist. And this book became a bestseller. In that book, he suggests that this universe may have made itself based on a theory called the M theory. He says this M theory could be the theory that Einstein was looking for, one unified theory about this universe. This may be the one. What's interesting is when we take a look at his book, he gives lots of evidence, several chapters, but then you come to the last page, his conclusion, the very last page. In fact, the second to last paragraph in his book. He says something along these lines. He says, if the M theory is finite, slash, which has not been proven yet, another slash, then maybe the universe could have made itself. Okay, see that? So let's repeat that statement a little bit. He says, if the M theory proves to be finite, if it is finite, slash, which has not been proven yet, then that could be a model for the universe producing itself. Okay. What does that tell you? Is it conclusive? Okay. So the M theory in itself is a very complicated theory, especially the youngsters here who read, who go to universities. If you go and read about the M theory, it is a very complex theory. It is not a simple theory. Second, theories can never be proven. Philosophers say you can only disprove a theory, you can never prove a theory. Yes, there is evidence to substantiate a theory, but at the end of the day, it remains a theory. Okay? So it's a complicated theory. The theory is not proven. And according to the word of this scientist himself, says, if it becomes finite, which has not yet been proven, which is another assumption, a complicated theory. This theory may be proven to be finite, which has not been the case. Once all these are put together, then maybe we have a model for a universe that produced itself. That's what the Quran refers to as dhann, doubt. وَإِنَّ الظَّنَّ لَا يُغْنِي مِنَ الْحَقِّ شَيْئًا. Dhann, this doubt, this I believe kind of thing, if does not substitute the truth, that there is a reality out there. The issue that we have is, he says additionally that there was nothing, there was a time that you may call it time zero, and then something was produced. The laws of physics were then produced, which then eventually resulted in the whole universe that we observe today. The question is, first of all, it is based on assumptions. However, our students, people, this book became a bestseller. The minute they see that it is written by this professor from this university, this physicist, then therefore it has to be true. And therefore they come and they argue all the time. This person, this physicist, is a physicist. We respect his science, we respect it. But we know that sometimes within the same field, when there are experts in the same field, they sometimes dispute about the origin of certain things. For example, I did my PhD on kidney stones. There are two schools in kidney stones about the formation. I attended a conference once where professors, experts, one of them got up onto the stage. He said, this is how kidney stones form, and this is the proof. He presents his proof. Gets off. The next speaker comes on, also a professor, expert in the field, says, this is how I think they form, not that way. You know, I think they form this way. And why? This is the proof. So in the same field, where both of them are experts in the field, they differ in the opinion as to how do you interpret the data. The data is data, but how do you interpret this data? Okay. Interestingly, I published a paper afterwards saying both of them are true. Both of them are right. But under what conditions? In some conditions it starts this way, other conditions starts that way. So within the same field, you may have a dispute among scholars, scientists, experts that are experts in that field. Now what happens when you take someone out of his field into a different field? A physicist. Interestingly, there is another professor of mathematics who's emeritus now from the University of Oxford by the name of Dr. John Lennox. Dr. John Lennox has a whole talk refuting the argument that this universe started from nothing and that the M theory is the solution to this problem. What's interesting, at the beginning of his discussion, his talk, Dr. Lennox says, I am a mathematician, not a theologian. However, since this professor of physics got into the theories of physics and so on and so forth, I will use that to answer the argument. In other words, this is not our field of expertise. We are physicists, mathematicians, we're not theologians. Okay. So now this person is stepping out of the boundaries that he is expert in. All right. Then he comes and says, if the theory is finite, then we will have an answer here. Since when have we seen randomness present something structured, something perfect? That is something that we really need to think about. We have a lot of youth. I once had a discussion with a young man who finished a PhD in physics, one of the brothers, and he's now having doubts. Do we really have a creator? Is there a God? Is there no God? After reading all these theories and all these philosophies out there. And I told him, listen, how can everything in this world have a cause, except when it comes to the world itself? When it comes to this world, there is no cause. It was just some random process. Research in universities today is based on causes. You go to scientists in the world today who are doing research. They're trying to discover how things happen. Why do certain things happen? Can we stop them? Can we prevent them? Can we cure them? Once I was invited to have a discussion with a professor of philosophy at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, where he was saying that there is no creator to this world. He gave his talk, I came on. I told him, listen, I'm going to talk to you as a scientist. I did research on diabetes and heart disease. 80% of diabetic patients, unfortunately, lose their lives because of a heart problem, heart failure. So scientists are trying to discover why, how come, why does that happen? I told him, if one day at one of those conferences where these scientists are meeting, thousands of them to discuss the research, a person gets up and says, listen guys, I figured it all out. All of you guys are wrong. You're wasting time, you're wasting money, billions of dollars have been wasted. I figured it out. The reason why 80% of diabetic patients die from heart failure is because of a random process of evolution. Khalas, that's it. I told him, what would be the reaction of the scientific community to this individual? What would they tell him? Will they accept that? The answer is no. What do you mean? It's a random process. There has to be a reason. We're trying to figure it out. I told him, if scientists cannot accept that 80% of diabetic patients die from heart failure for no reason, they cannot accept a heart can fail without a reason, how do you want me as a scientist to accept that this entire universe, with all its complexities, with all its dynamics, with all the reactions that are happening into it, came into existence through a random process? Very logical argument. Being a professor of philosophy, he understood the argument. His response was, well, maybe we don't understand the source. Our discussion is not about understanding the source. It is about the existence of the source. So by him saying that, he just admitted, what? There is a source. It's a very logical argument, a very logical statement. So you see, some people, some of those scientists who may write beautifully, they have beautiful ways of writing. They have big names. They have big titles. And hence, when people read it, they believe it as dogma. This is khalas, this is the truth. It's as if it is revelation. This is their speculation. This is their theories. We respect their thinking, but doesn't mean it's correct. It doesn't mean we agree with it. And that's what many times happens, my dear brothers and sisters. We have a lot of people who may not have much knowledge, much background knowledge in that specific field. But when they read this, they say, khalas, this is the way it is. And so it starts to create doubts in the minds of people. They start doubting. Maybe this is true. This is it. But once you dig a little bit into the argument, it fails. The argument does not stand a chance. Even if you claim that there was time zero and this universe did not exist, and then it came into being. Well, how were the laws of physics then born? All these laws of physics. How did it just happen randomly that the earth came at this position in this universe? The sun happened to be by luck at the exact distance from the earth so that life can be on earth. Had the sun been a little bit too close, life would not have existed. If it's gone too far, life would not have existed. The moon happened to be by chance at the exact distance. If this moon comes a little bit too close, gravitational forces started to occur that may cause disaster. If it goes too far, another problems will start to happen. These laws of gravity, the forces that came into existence, the electromagnetic force, the nuclear force, the gravitational force, all this happened randomly. It is difficult to comprehend that all of this came into being without a design, a maker. That's one. Second, let's take a look at the theory of probability. Probability. What does probability say? If you have a coin and you flip it, what is the chances of that coin landing on heads? Huh? You guys awake, inshallah? No? What is it? Ahsantum, mashallah. Tails? 50%. That's when you have one coin. When you have 10 coins. Not one anymore, it's 10 coins. What is the chances of all these 10 coins landing on heads? Is it 50%? Not anymore. Each one is 50%. So now the probability is much less. If you have 100 coins, what is the chance of those 100 coins all being heads, all being tails? If you have 1,000 of them, now the probability, according to mathematicians, they say the probability is so low that it is merely impossible. It's almost impossible. If you have 1,000 coins and you flip all those 1,000 coins, the probability of all of them becoming heads or all of them becoming tails is so low that it is merely impossible. Okay, great. So what is the probability then of all these things that we see in this universe? And how many times accident happens to be so well? Yani, why did the heart happen to be up here? Why not in the thighs, for example? Okay. Why did the eyes by accident happen to be up in the head? Why not in the feet? Accident, it's a random process. There's no design behind it. The kidneys, why did they happen to be doing their job? Why wasn't the liver doing their job, for example? Why is the liver in this place? How come all this? The neurons, the brain, how it functions and all the signals that it sends. How many accidents? How many times? According to probability, it is merely impossible. How many accidents can you have? How many chances can you have? And this leads us to the next point where people say, well, what about the theory of evolution then? Because a lot of our students, our children, many people, when they go to university, that is the only theory that is taught about human beings. There is no other theory. It is taught as if it is the truth. This is the absolute truth. Well, we give similar arguments. We don't deny everything about the theory. So, for example, scientists today say there is definitely some microevolution, things happening in viruses. Viruses can mutate, they can evolve. You say, okay, that's fine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us humans a means of survival, a means to defend ourselves as a body. It is called what? The immune system. Ahsant. Allah gave humanity, the human beings, the immune system. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may have given these viruses this mechanism to survive. The survival mechanism. Okay. That's fair. We don't deny that. But to claim that, for example, as this Russian scientist once made a discovery. He had some materials that were inorganic. Inorganic materials. He put them into this tube with a high voltage, a high charge. the reaction occurred, and the result were some organic materials. So they say, there you go. Inorganic materials. And to understand what I'm talking about, do you guys know of something called the periodic table? Good, the periodic table, you've heard of it, okay. There is one element on the periodic table that deals with organic chemistry. Do you know which one? Carbon. It's called carbon. It's a very important element. Carbon deals with organic chemistry. There are only 2 carbon species or molecules that are not considered organic molecules. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. That's it. Everything else that contains carbon is considered organic. Everything else is on that table is inorganic. Okay? If we may say so. So materials that don't deal with organic, and I'm oversimplifying, by the way. You know, this is just an oversimplification for the purpose of this talk. So this scientist put these inorganic elements together, or materials together, high voltage, an organic compound came out. Say there, see, there you go. So it may be possible that billions of years ago, you know, some thunder came, some shock came, and with the existence of all these materials, inorganic species turned into organic, and that's how the process may have begun. And then life may have started in the water, and sooner or later that thing may have evolved, and so on and so forth, until we have the human being today. Okay. Again, we come back to the same argument. We say, first of all, based on probability, how many times would an accident happen? If this whole process was just random process that took place one step at a time, but randomly, how did that happen to come to bring in life into the human being? This complicated human being, billions of cells. That's what made a biochemist by the name of Michael Behe. Michael Behe is a biochemist from Lehigh University. He's a professor. He came and he studied the bacterium. Bacterium is single cell. Humans have billions of cells. He studied the bacterium. From studying the bacterium, he came to the conclusion that this bacterium, with all the organelles, the machines that work inside the cell of this bacterium, it's impossible to believe that all this came by random. He's studying a single cell. So he introduced then what he called the intelligent design theory. There is an intelligent designer. Now you may call it God, you may call it whatever you want to call it, we'll call it the intelligent designer. There is some designer to this world, to this universe. Because he just found it difficult, and that's why he wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box. Then came another scientist by the name of Jonathan Wells, who liked the theory. He also adopted the same theory and wrote another book called The Icons of Evolution, Science or Myth. So there are some scientists out there today who are doubting this theory. And in fact, Michael Behe tried to fight in the courts to introduce the intelligent design theory in the textbooks as an alternative theory to evolution. Evolution is a theory. I also have a theory. Why can't you teach my theory to the students? But the courts shut it down in California because they thought it was linked to religion. And in the United States, it is illegal to teach religion in public system. So his theory was shut down. What I'm saying is that Michael Behe said, no, I can't accept it. There has to be a designer. There has to be a maker. So to claim that everything just evolved randomly, well, logical deduction, sound arguments, probability theories, rejected. It's difficult to accept it. I remember when I was doing some research in chemistry, there was one particular experiment that I was performing. That experiment, I had to perform it under nitrogen. There cannot be oxygen in the container. If you had one oxygen molecule, the whole reaction fails. So there had to be no oxygen. All the oxygen had to be pumped out. The heat had to be adjusted within half a degree. If it were half a degree higher, half a degree lower, the experiment would have failed. the timing of the experiments, the ratio of the materials. And so all these factors had to be put in until you get your results. That's one reaction. One reaction. That reaction had to have a designer, a planner, a maker, someone who understood how the reaction occurs, understood the details of the reaction in order for it to become successful. One reaction. How many reactions exist in the body alone? Alone. How does your pancreas know exactly, has that sensor that knows exactly how much sugar you have in your blood, and it secretes exact amount of insulin so that this sugar can go into your cells? 30% of the heart's energy comes from sugar. 70% comes from fat. If there is a problem in that ratio, then the heart recognizes, oh, there is not enough sugar anymore. I need to pump, I need to work. Well, then get me more fat. So an enzyme gets secreted from the heart, goes so that it can allow more fat to enter into your heart. You see all these links. Everything, subhanallah, how it's all linked together. All this random. No designer. It is difficult to accept that. So then people say, well, what about, the species or the fossils that they are discovering that are 300,000 years old, that they look like human beings, for example, and all that? We say, no problem. The hadith of Imam al-Baqir, alayhi salam, Allah salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, says before our Adam, there were 1,000 Adams. In the ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels that I'm going to be creating a human being, the angels, what did they say? You're going to create someone who's going to cause bloodshed and corruption? How did the angels know that the human is going to cause bloodshed and corruption? So one of the mufassirin, one of the ulama says it is possible that they may have seen this mix. The ingredients, these ingredients were seen before. When these ingredients were being mixed together, and I'm using this figuratively, obviously, not literally. When they saw these ingredients being mixed together, they realized, wait a minute, this mix was a dangerous mix before. It created a lot of problems. So why are you mixing it again? Why are you designing it again? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I know what you don't know. Okay? We're going to be creating Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. So you see, when you put all this together, we have an explanation. There may have been life on this earth, people who may have resembled our form of humanity, but they went into extinction. So they're no longer existent.